Welcome to your final exam explainer for ANT 217. I'm Professor Adams. Listen, Professor Lewis and I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, so we designed this high-yield review to cover the absolute core themes of Konrad Kohtek's Mirror for Humanity. We're going to break down those complex theories, hammer home the exact vocabulary you need for quick recall, and visually map out the whole shebang so you can absolutely ace this test. All right. Here is our game plan for today. We're hitting 6 main areas: culture and theory, fieldwork lenses, economics and politics, kinship in marriage, language and belief, and we'll cap it all off with a rapid-fire practice quiz to test your knowledge. Keep in mind the overarching theme connecting all of this is holism, how all these wildly different human systems interconnect. Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, Culture and Theory, specifically looking at the sublimation of instinct. So, one of the most fascinating debates in all of anthropology is about why culture even exists in the first place, right? The syllabus wants you to really grasp the psychoanalytic view, which was heavily inspired by Sigmund Freud. This theory basically argues that we humans are born with these raw, natural instincts, stuff like aggression and sexual desire, that would literally cause absolute chaos if left completely unchecked. So culture acts as this crucial bridge, sublimating, or channeling those raw instincts into socially acceptable forms. Think about the Maori haka. It brilliantly illustrates sublimation in action. Instead of unchecked, destructive violence tearing a community apart, that innate, boiling human aggression is structured, it's controlled, it's redirected into an incredibly unifying cultural ritual. It takes potential chaos and turns it into collective strength. It's really powerful stuff. Now, for the exam, you absolutely must be able to contrast Freud's idea of sublimation with functionalism, which was championed by anthropologists like Bronislaw Malinowski. Kohtek actually critiques the psychoanalytic view as being pretty heavily Eurocentric and, frankly, way too focused on repression. Functionalists, on the flip side, argue that culture isn't just about repressing our dark urges. Actually, scratch that. It's more like culture exists to fulfill our basic, everyday, practical human needs: food, shelter, safety, community. So Freud is about repression, while Malinowski is all about utility. Okay, before we move on, let's lock in some critical vocabulary. We've got a killer memory trick for you that shows up on the final all the time. AAE. That stands for Assimilation, Acculturation, Enculturation. Just think: lose, exchange, learn. Assimilation is when a minority group completely loses its native culture to the dominant one. Acculturation is a mutual exchange. Both cultures blend and influence each other. And enculturation is simply how you learn your own culture right from childhood. Lose, exchange, learn. AAE. Seriously, get your pens out and write that down. Moving right along to Section 2. Fieldwork lenses, or how we actually study humanity. You know, in anthropology, the specific lens you use to observe a culture completely shapes the data you end up with. If you want to know how humans organize themselves, you can't just read about them in a dusty library. You've got to get your boots on the ground. This brings us back to Bronislaw Malinowski. He actually pioneered immersive ethnographic fieldwork sort of by accident when he got stranded in the Trobriand Islands during World War I. He completely proved that to truly understand a culture, you cannot be an armchair anthropologist just reading missionary reports. No way. You have to live there, learn the local language, and fully participate in daily life to really grasp their perspective. And when you're out there in the field doing that ethnography, you use 2 very different lenses. Listen up, because this is a guaranteed exam question. The Emic versus the Etic approach. Emic, spelled with an M, is the insider's view. It's how the local people think, what things actually mean to them. Etic, with a T, is the outsider's perspective. It's the scientist stepping back to objectively categorize and compare patterns across totally different cultures. The really crucial takeaway here: the best anthropologists don't just pick one or the other. They start emically to get that deep, rich, local context, and then they step back etically to identify those big, universal human patterns. This naturally leads us to arguably the most absolutely crucial methodological tool in an ethnographer's toolkit: cultural relativism. And this is the exact opposite of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the bias of judging another culture by the standards of your own, labeling things as backward or primitive. Cultural relativism, though, means understanding a culture strictly within its own unique context. Now remember, for the exam, Kohtek makes a big point that relativism is a methodological tool to prevent bias. It helps an ethnographer understand why a culture does something without necessarily endorsing the behavior itself. All right, on to Section 3, Economics and Political Interconnectedness. This is what I like to call the math of anthropology. This is where the concept of holism really, truly shines. In anthropology, holism means that human systems do not exist in a vacuum. We can map out exactly how a society's economic engine dictates its political organization. Take a look at Elman Service's sociopolitical types. They map directly to economic adaptive strategies. So, foraging economies map to bands. These are small, egalitarian, kin-based groups with local, temporary rules. But as populations grow and shift to horticulturalism or pastoralism, they scale up into tribes. When you intensify food production even further, like through intensive agriculture or pastoral nomadism, you get chiefdoms. And finally, massive agricultural and industrial economies absolutely require the permanent formal government regulation of a state. As the economy scales up, the political complexity literally has to scale up to regulate it. It's a direct correlation. Now, we really want to highlight the chieftain here because it's this incredibly fascinating transitional phase right between egalitarian tribes and highly stratified states. Notice the key characteristics. Chiefdoms have a permanent central leader who manages regional resources. But what's totally unique is that it introduces incipient social ranking, meaning some people actually have more wealth and prestige than others. The chief collects goods and then redistributes them. Yet, unlike a formal state, a chieftain is still fundamentally rooted in kinship and family ties. It's like a bridge between two worlds. Let's shift gears to Section 4, Kinship, Descent, and Marriage, the architecture of our social bonds. Moving from macro politics down to the human level, kinship in non-industrial societies is the absolute core organizing principle. It's the glue holding everything together. The big vocabulary term here is the descent group. This is a permanent social unit claiming common ancestry, and this is fundamentally different from the standard nuclear family, parents and kids that we think of in industrial societies. A nuclear family eventually breaks apart when people move away or pass on, but a descent group, that endures for generations. Whether it traces lineage through the father, which is patrilineal, or the mother, matrilineal, its main purpose is to permanently manage ancestral estates, land, and resources across time. It's built to last. When it comes to marriage in anthropological terms, you kind of have to throw out the Hollywood romance. Globally, marriage serves highly practical, almost business-like functions. Sure, it regulates reproduction and child-rearing, but most importantly, it acts as a vital economic and political alliance between different descent groups. This is exactly why rules of exogamy, which means marrying outside your own group, are so incredibly common. It forces groups to build peaceful, durable alliances outward. It's a survival strategy that ensures mutual protection and resource sharing. All right, on to Section 5, Language, Belief, and Control, the Mechanisms of Meaning. We're diving into the symbolic realms now. To an anthropologist, language and belief aren't just ways we express ourselves. They're active mechanisms that construct and control our social reality. The absolute must-know theory here is the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This theory argues that language doesn't just describe the world around you, it literally shapes how you perceive it. For example, if your culture's vocabulary has 50 distinct words for different shades of blue, your brain actually perceives those color variations differently than someone whose language only has one catch-all word for blue. So different cultural vocabularies for things like time, family relations, or colors literally alter human thought patterns. How wild is that? And much like language structures our thoughts, religion deeply structures our society. Anthropologists view religion as a cultural universal, something that provides meaning and emotional comfort everywhere. Before the exam, pay special attention to the concept of social control. Religion utilizes these intense rituals to bind communities together in shared, powerful emotional experiences, which the sociologist Emil Durkheim famously called religious effervescence. But simultaneously, it uses taboos, forbidden actions, to clearly define right and wrong. By doing that, it enforces obedience and maintains social order without even needing a formal police force. It's a built-in regulatory system. Okay, Section 6. It's time for our practice quiz to see what actually stuck. Let's get right into it. We're going to fire off some rapid-fire questions to really lock in these definitions before your final. Here is your first question. What is the fundamental difference in anthropology between a nuclear family and an extended family? Take a second to think about it. Well, if you said a nuclear family is just parents and children living in one household, you'd hit the nail on the head. The extended family includes 3 or more generations, like your grandparents, aunts, cousins, who don't necessarily live under one roof. But the real exam key here is why they exist. Industrial societies and foraging vans favor the mobility of nuclear families. They need to be able to pack up and move for work or food. But farming and horticultural societies heavily rely on the shared, stable labor networks of extended families and descent groups to work the land. Awesome.
Next question. I'm calling back to that memory trick we introduced in the very first module. What does the mnemonic AAA stand for when discussing cultural learning?
I really hope you wrote this down. It stands for assimilation, where you lose your native culture, acculturation, where cultures exchange and blend, and enculturation, the ongoing process of learning your own culture from birth. Lose, exchange, learn. Make absolutely sure you have this exact phrasing committed to memory for test day.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought that connects everything we've just talked about to your actual daily life. As modernization shifts our traditional kinship bonds and completely globalizes our languages, what new cultural rituals are we creating to sublimate our instincts today? Think about it. Our digital identities, social media outrage, or intense online fandoms, are these our modern rituals? Good luck applying these ancient anthropological lenses to our hyper-modern world. And definitely, good luck on your final exam. You're going to crush it.